would like to go back to what all the speakers have been talking about. And it's been extremely interesting. My thanks to all of you. So the themes, some of the themes that have emerged is that it's preferable to have hands-on active learning where there is full engagement by the learners. Then the importance of competitions and Olympiads to facilitate that active learning and the motivation and the learning of appropriate skills for science and mathematics. Furthermore, the importance of the basics, that if you haven't learned the basic skills in science and maths, you won't be able to get to the level where you can have good understanding and engagement and can participate in competitions and Olympiads. Then the theme of cross-curricular, multidisciplinary, collaborative education. And that's come out as quite a strong theme, that you cannot just limit a child's learning to one specific discipline, although of course you learn the basics in one specific discipline. So it's not ruling that out, but it's important to get from the basics to a situation where multiple disciplines are understood and the understanding in particular disciplines inform the others. Yes, then the subject boundaries are permeable to an extent. And then technology addresses gaps in education and prepares learners for the future. And this is technology as facilitator of learning and teaching. And it helps to mediate the crisis in education, the lack of teachers, various shortcomings, and at the same time it prepares learners and teachers for the future when hopefully communications technology will be more accessible to everyone. So those are the themes that I have picked up. I am sure there are more. There's been such a rich morning that in fact there are other themes. And then from Ian, we've had very interesting themes emerging and a questioning of the kind of things that we have been discussing, but a corroboration of others. So how do we structure this discussion? Can we start with the importance of the basics in science and maths? I wonder, that isn't contentious at all, hey? Let's talk about the concept of skills. I mean, Ian has pointed out that there's a confusion around what exactly is meant by skills. If you're talking about robotic skills, the kind of skills that we need, and he has problematized it and said that that isn't quite what we're talking about. So what are we talking about when we talk about skills in STEM education? Yes, Sharonjeet. You're muted.
Oh dear. Okay. Shall I kickstart the process by suggesting that all the efforts that one makes in schools in terms of skills is such as the scientific process skills. hypothesizing, observing, recording, learning to ask appropriate questions, learning to develop one's oracy skills when it comes to mathematics and science, making presentations, making inferences, making conclusions. And there's a very long list in that arena, is what I think of skills when I think of skills within mathematics and science, and that's what we promote within the lessons and within the projects. It's not at all about that. If you can engage with EV3 and construct a robot, that then somehow you would begin to understand the industry use of it, because that's very far-fetched. That just can't be.
Right.
But understanding basic skills, as you said, the basics of mathematics and science will move them towards that journey and make them take an interest in it. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Matshidiso.
Okay, sorry, I was muted. All right. My take on this is that teaching them the basic skill, like kids learn from if they can visualize something and you can show them that whatever that they are visualizing is actually doable without being intimidated, whether it's science, it's maths, it's engineering or whatever. I think they can learn from that, because I'm looking at other programs that we run where we teach kids how to code a self-driving car. So before we can teach them how to code that, we first show them a video of a self-driving car. We show them the elements and the components of what made it a self-driving car. And then from there, we make them to code that self-driving car, and they see the simulation of that. They can actually drive the car after they have developed it. So in that case, you are teaching them to say, it's possible. You can also do it. You don't need to be an engineer, or you don't need to be a designer for you to come up with whatever that it's on the table. And then we also look at the chatbots. The chatbot, they see the chatbot, they know about them. We show them the chatbot, and then we teach them how to create their own chatbot. So we teach them the computational thinking, we teach them the process thinking, to say this chatbot, for it to be able to respond to other questions, it's because it was written to respond to questions. And then you teach them about the face recognition technology. First, show them how the face recognition works, what are the elements, what is looked at, and then you teach them how to code it. Those kids, tomorrow, they'll be the innovators, because they know that it's doable, and they can also visualize, they can see it, they can do it, they can feel it. I think that's the way to go, without intimidating them. That's why if we start them at 5 years, they think it's part of their life, they need to know it, and whereas if they are older, we start talking about science as if it's for clever people and all of that. Then the rest who feel that they're not too clever, then they shy away from the subject and they don't want to be part of it. So integrating the subjects and making sure that the child get a touch of each and every element of it, they can then decide how they want to use STEAM going forward, how it can work for them, whether they're in art, whether they're in technology, whether they're in engineering. So yeah, that's my take.
Very interesting. Thank you, Matshidiso. Ellie.
Yes, thank you, Yancy. I think we also should not forget how, if we really want to improve STEM education, we should, all stakeholders, and the mandate to do that is with government in terms of in-service and pre-service training for teachers. And that's very important. To equip teachers with the skills that we're talking about, but also to improve the content knowledge of STEM subjects. I've recently listened to a talk by Dr. Mukwana from the University of Limpopo, who shared his experience with us as first as learner and then as teacher, and now he has a PhD in mathematics education. Now, when he was in high school, he failed mathematics every single year until a matric. And why? Because the matric, he got a good, enthusiastic mathematics teacher. His mathematics marks improved from below 30% to 72% in matric. And today he has a PhD in mathematics. So the point I'm making is nothing can replace good quality teaching. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Ellie. Right, so I think we still have different definitions of skills here. They're the skills to do specific tasks, such as coding a self-driving car. And we've heard some other tasks throughout this morning about specific things that can be done with coding, for example. And they are the mastery of particular tasks. And I think we're at a stage where we can recognize that there's another conception of the skills, and that is the basic skills to do mathematics and science. So there is, and then there's a third one, and that is the skills of communication, of talking and doing presentations. So it is very difficult to talk about skills, in fact, because, you know, you have to define what kind of skills you are talking about. Ian, do you want to comment on it? Are you muted?
Oh, sorry. If there's time, I'd like to just ask Matshidiso to unpack a little bit more carefully the notion of showing learners a self-driving car by means of a video or whatever, and then teaching them to code the self-driving car. Now, is it possible to bring that down to a more fine-grained level, which is to ask a question about responding to a stop sign, okay? Now, so one of the things that a self-driving car must be able to do, obviously, is to recognize the image of a stop sign, and then to have an algorithm written into it, so to speak, running inside the machine, which then determines appropriate responses from the self-driving motor car, which is stop and then look right, look left, etc., etc., which are all actions on the part of a machine that are required here. Just by the way, similar things are required of guide dogs, okay? One must be able to train those particular responses, recognition of symbols and responses into guide dogs in order for them to be able to deal with stop signs in the street. Now, I can see that's obviously important in a self-driving motor car. What I'm interested in, Matshidiso, is how you then turn that into a coding process, teaching coding to a young learner. I mean, what computer language, for example, are you teaching them to do that coding in, and how are you teaching them to write very simple algorithms using that coding language?
Okay.
I mean, you say it, but I can't really conceive of how you're doing it, and I would be very interested to talk to you in more detail about it. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. So the coding language that I'm using Python. You know, with Python,
Yeah, I know
you've
Python,
got
yeah.
different libraries. So so for different, let's say maybe for a face recognition program, I use a different library. For chatbot, I would use a different library, and for a self-driving car, I'll use a different library. Obviously, because I'm teaching kids, it will get to a point where I teach them to write an algorithm that will recognize a stop sign. For now, you are showing them the idea that it's doable. You can write that code, you can have a simulator, you can actually drive that car. And then you leave it up to them to say, how do we enhance our car? You are giving them the basic because you are triggering their curiosity. They should be coming up with those questions to say, how do we make it then to recognize a stop sign? So obviously, because it's you are teaching, it's a new language that you are teaching. You are also teaching the computer to recognize things. So obviously, you'll have an algorithm that will create the sign of the stop sign so that the car can be able to recognize it going forward. But for now, you teach them how to drive it using the WADS, if I'm not mistaken, using them, teaching them that how to create it and be able to use their keyboards to actually drive that car. So the basics, and then as they go through different stages, then obviously new ideas will come from them. It's expected that it must come from them.
But are you teaching them to write algorithms themselves, or are you teaching them to respond, if you like, or to use algorithms that are written by other people?
To write it.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Yeah, can we talk more at some point?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
All right.
Great. It is absolutely fascinating that we can now do that, engaging children in coding. There were some developments many years ago, gosh, almost 30 years ago. There were initiatives in using basic programming to, there was the turtle program.
Yes, Seymour Papert logo program.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but that, you see, that's a different level of computer-based language. It's not at the level of Python or whatever. It's at the you use Python. In fact, the most recent versions of Logo have used Python to then develop a particular computer program, if you like, that in which children can manipulate an object, which is the turtle, in order to do geometry, to produce geometric shapes and to understand what the geometry of those shapes are.
Yeah.
But it's at a different level of coding. It's not Python level coding. It's using Python to construct a code for a mathematics classroom, if you like. It's a different entity.
Yes. Yes, indeed. I still think that's useful.
Yeah, no, it's very useful.
It is a different thing.
Some people will tell you that Papert is dead, but he's not, actually.
Good. Okay. Thank you for that conversation so far. That is very interesting. What are we saying about skills to for the workplace eventually? It does seem like we are talking in terms of making children aware of what is possible with coding. But are we actually getting them ready for the workplace? I mean, that might be more at high school level that we would be thinking about that. But what would you say? Does anyone have a comment on that? Okay, if not, I'm going to read the chat. Oh, Parthy, are you?
Yeah, I just want to respond to your last comment. If I could just refer back to what Sharon Jeet mentioned about skills, we focus on scientific skills. I don't think the learners really understand it because it's done in a very, arbitrary manner. They don't realize how that translates into the working world, the real world. Take, for example, for a learner to make a decision on something, sometimes they do it very subjectively. Now, if they learn scientific skills, they'll learn, if I want to buy a new cell phone, for example, I must look at the facts. I look at affordability, all these things, functionality. When I analyze it, then I can see it's very obvious that cell phone B is better suited to my purpose. That's one of the things. We also have communication skills coming through. Quite often this is underestimated, but when you enter the real world, you may have to have a sales pitch. If you want to promote an activity, if you want something to be adopted in your company, you would have to actually rely on your scientific skills. And then when you present it to management, for example, or to your team, you then translate all those facts into tangible outcomes so that the people you're dealing with can actually see what you're saying makes sense because it's backed up by solid evidence. Now, I don't think the learners actually see the end product. What I would rather suggest, and even when it comes to career development, quite often we have career fairs and we have a whole lot of stuff going through. That's a shotgun approach. You hit and you hope for the best, and it's not working. So why do you do it year in, year out? Rather, have things like, science camps, invite experts. You know how we have these science slams. Those are fantastic, where we have scientists and young scientists, by the way, who have to explain what they do in a matter of 2 minutes. That makes sense, not only to the learners, it makes sense to me. I may not understand, some of the details of their field of study, but in 2 minutes, I understand what they do. And I think this is what our young learners, especially in the township schools, need. They don't see a real scientist. They just see a nurse, a teacher, a policeman, a social worker. They don't know what an engineer does, what he looks like. So I think we have a huge void in linking our learners to real scientists and engineers. So there's no way that they're going to be motivated to become a scientist or an engineer. So we do have a lot of work ahead of us to close that chasm. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Parthy. Sharanjeet?
If I can just expand on the notion of skills, we actually list these skills, whether they're high school learners doing coding and robotics and learning to code after they have built a robot, a raptor, or whatever it might be. There are so many skills: testing predictions, symbolizing, conjecturing, generalizing. Generality is a big mathematics issue. Most kids don't understand, why do we have to generalize? How do we hypothesize even? We say to them, make a hypothesis, but what does it actually mean? How do you just mentioned concretizing reality. What does that actually mean? And in my humble view, even at the age of 16, 17, when they are approaching the end of the school year, they often have difficulty in reasoning. And that's the reason at the Math Center, we list these things. We've got 4 posters of skills where they need to learn to understand the meanings of these words. What exactly do you mean by conceptualize? Recognize patterns. What does all this mean? And we, particularly when you're using a specific language, variables, different types of variables, they get very confused. And in my humble view, these are all skills. And there's literally, we've got a poster of about 50 skills that we like them to develop in their writing, in their presentations, in their oral communication, so that they begin to become more confident in understanding the nature of mathematics and the nature of science, which to me is a huge issue.
That sounds very interesting that you've got 50
At
skills.
least 50. I mean, I haven't got it in front of me, but at least 50, I'm sure, yes. There are 4 posters around looking at a scientific experiment and a mathematical engagement.
Wonderful. Are those on your website by any chance?
I can send them to you. I'm
That-
sure they are on the website, but happily send them to you.
Okay.
I'm just so thrilled about this morning that I managed to attend it. And I need to say a big thank you to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharanjit. I appreciate your participation.
Thank you.
Tetson, Nkwana.
Hi, Nancy. I just want to also highlight the need for the most basic skills, because such as, for example, your writing skills, even your presenting skills, talking, basic talking to a crowd. I've worked with so many schools and kids are lacking in those, and I think it can be attributed to those activities are not done enough at classroom level. So I think it is our responsibility as people who are so interested in learning outside of the classroom to engage learners more in activities like that, activities that challenge learners to write more, that challenge learners to talk more, and that just to up their confidence, because those are basic skills that will be needed when they enter into the workplace later on in their lives. And it is at this age where those skills should be sharpened, really. So yeah, I just wanted to comment on that.
Thank you. In the chat box, we have awesome, Matsidiso. Great work you're doing out there. We also teach coding and robotics from grade 4 to 12. We are working on developing teaching and learning aids on the ABCs of coding for early childhood development. I'd like to engage you. That is from Palesa Mahlangu. Tetson, is that a new hand?
No, sorry. I forgot
Okay.
to lower my hand, sorry.
And Tetson said in the chat, Matsudiso, very interesting there. I use block coding, but obviously very limited as the lines of coding are pre-written. It does, however, require some level of critical thinking as the lines have to be arranged in sequence to produce a desired command. Okay, we have come to the end of the discussion forum, the end of the discussion, and I'm very, very pleased, but also, you know, in a good discussion forum, I feel like we can go on for days, and that we'll still have a lot to talk about and to sort out. I certainly think that we've touched on much of the most important issues that we have in STEM education. And we will continue the discussion tomorrow. I just want to say to you, we will have everything on the website, the presentations with the speaker's permission, the recordings. We'll have proceedings that have been captured by Heather in about 2 weeks' time. And we will be issuing a media release, which will summarize the issues that are being discussed here. So we try and be very even-handed in our media releases. We're not going to choose necessarily one part or the other, but it's about informing people about what we have been discussing here and what requires attention in practice, or further thinking, or further research, in fact. Gordon Branson says, resilience, a new youth skill for the fourth industrial revolution. And that does look very interesting. That's the future of work is uncertain. And the fourth industrial revolution, there I've lost it again. Okay. please read it there. Oh, the fourth industrial revolution is set to fundamentally transform the way modern societies are organized, and technological advances, especially in AI and automation, may lead to serious job displacement and skills shortages. Thank you for the presentation. Vilna has put up the link there. 3 presentations have already been posted. We're quite quick on this. Thank you very much, Vilna. Okay, with that, I want to conclude and thank you very much for everyone for their participation and for their attendance indeed. It's been a good attendance, and I hope that you've learned much from it and that it's been thought-provoking for you to go and chew on and hopefully address in your practice if you're involved in education at all. So goodbye to everyone and have a lovely day further, and we hope to see you back here tomorrow.